Here we go with 10 more questions. The first, what was the best book or series you've ever read? It's a great question. I feel like I should have read more than I have, but I will say there's a tie for two that have come to mind. First, the Truman biography by David McCullough. Loved that book. The other is Seabiscuit by, I think her name was Laura Hillenbrand or Hillebrand. In both books, I think I loved them because the characters, the people in the stories, the horse, they really came to life. It really was a powerful moment in the Truman biography when he dies, or when the horse dies in Seabiscuit. It was a powerful thing. I remember having tears in my eyes when I read about the death of Seabiscuit, and all those people affected by both of them, Harry Truman, Seabiscuit. The impact of those stories, it was really powerful, and those authors just did an excellent job of bringing them to life. What question would you most like to know the answer to? This is probably a pretty obvious occupational question. I would love to know what it's like in heaven. I love pondering it. I love imagining it, trying to fathom what happens after we die. Maybe kind of a deep question, but I would love to know what people experience when they die, when they go from this life to the next. What are you interested in that most people haven't heard of? I think Frankoma pottery is probably the easiest answer there. I find a lot of people haven't heard of it, and I'm happy to talk about it. So it's kind of an obscure pottery, but it's part of what I love about it, that it's something I didn't know anything about. It caught my eye one time a long time ago, and I've been on a journey with it ever since. So it would be Frankoma pottery. Why did you decide to do the work you're doing now? When I was in seventh grade, we got a new priest, and he was the kindest, most joyful person, and he just seemed like such a down-to-earth, everyday person, but also he had a special quality to his presence. And there were stories all over our parish about all the nice things he did for people. He was very generous, and if somebody was in need, he was there for them. And I remember just being so inspired by that and thinking these words, what a great thing it would be just to help people all day, that would be your job, that you would get to help people. So Father Coleman really inspired me all those years ago. What state or country do you never want to go back to? Wow. I don't think there is one. I'd like to think there's good everywhere. I don't even remember lots of bad experiences. There were some from different trips, but really, I think I'd be happy to go back anywhere. So no shade on any state or country here. Where do you usually go when you have time off? I think the question means as far as travel. Two places, Oregon coast and Cape San Blas, Florida. Opposite corners of the country, very opposite cultures, but I think both are quiet ocean experiences. Cape San Blas is a very undiscovered, very quiet part of Florida, and the Oregon coast, it's busy in the summer, but it's still pretty quiet and pristine and beautiful. So either of those places. What are you most looking forward to in the next 10 years? Lots of little things, and I guess lots of big things, but the one that comes to mind for me, at some point I would like to take a sabbatical. Diocesan priests are allowed, and we used to be encouraged to take a sabbatical every 10 years. For lots of reasons, that doesn't happen as frequently as it used to. The need is great for us to be in parishes, and financially it's something that's rather expensive, and there hasn't been money in recent years. I think our diocese has started to return some of that funding, but for a time it was not there. So lots of priests haven't been doing that, but taking a sabbatical is something that's encouraged for us to stay educated, spiritually alive and vital, and to recharge. So I would like to do that sometime in the next 10 years. What is the most annoying question that people ask you regularly? I don't get anything specific except any question that starts with, why didn't you, or why didn't we? Those three words always put me on the defensive, so I usually don't like a question like that. If you suddenly became a master at woodworking, what would you make? Again, this is probably predictable, but I really would love to carve statues. I think wooden statues are the most beautiful statues. I'm not as much a fan of plaster, and most statues these days, if we're lucky, are plaster. Many times they're rosin um, but I think wooden statues are just beautiful, especially unpainted wooden statues. There's a timelessness uh, and just a warmth to that. So I would love to carve wooden statues. What could you give a 40-minute presentation on with absolutely no preparation? I hope I could give a 40-minute presentation on the Eucharist without loads of preparation, since I celebrate it almost daily, if not more than once a day. I'd like to think I could give a 40-minute presentation on the Eucharist with little to no preparation, but it's probably not the best way to approach it. What amazing, let's see, no, I'm skipping that question. Um, what amazing thing did you do that no one was around to see? I didn't really get much out of that question, and I don't really have an answer for it. So, what hobby would you get into if time and money weren't an issue? I think collecting classic Corvettes would be a hobby I would absolutely love. When I was a kid, like the 72 Corvette, those were the coolest. But I look back now to the earlier Corvettes, any of them. If time and money weren't an issue, I would love to collect classic Corvettes. If you didn't have to sleep, what would you do with the extra time? I'm sure I would just be listening to music. There's never enough time for me to listen to music, and it really is so energizing and rejuvenating. So I'm sure at least half of the night I'd be listening to music. When people come to you for help, what do they usually want help with? I think often it's just to be a good listener. I think a lot of times people are just hoping I can help them find a way through something or find a next step in some difficult situation in their lives. Maybe just by listening to them and giving them the opportunity to talk it out. Or maybe people want help in how to pray through it. Is there a scripture that you would recommend, they might ask? Or is there some form of prayer that you think could really help me through this? So that's typically the first kind of help people come to me with. Um, what is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lives? I think everybody should go on a retreat at least once in their lives. Uh, I can say one of the most life-changing experiences I ever had, and I've talked about it plenty of times at masses, is this 5-day silent retreat that I did back in 1992. I haven't done a 5-day or sustained silent retreat since. We do silent retreats when we go to Conception as a presbyterate, but we're allowed to talk if we just leave campus. But this 5-day silent retreat in the seminary was very strict, and the blessings and the grace of that continue to abound in my life. So I think everybody should attempt that. I think silence is good, and some solitude is good. A scary thing to do and a big deal, but anything. Anyway, I think that would be something good for everybody to do. So